This Don Juan Manuel, Senor, was a rich and worthy gentleman who had the bad vice of killing people. Every night at 11 o'clock, when the palace clock was striking, he went out from his magnificent house. As you know, Senor, it still is standing in the street that had been named after him, all muffled in his cloak, and under it his dagger in his hand. Then he would meet one in the dark street, and would ask him politely, "What is the hour of the night?" And that person, having heard the striking of the clock, would answer, "It is 11 hours of the night." And Don Juan Manuel would say to him, "Senor, you are fortunate above all men, because you know precisely the hour at which you die." Then he would thrust with his dagger, and then leave the dead gentleman lying on the street. He would come back again into his own home. And this bad vice of Don Juan Manuel, of killing people, went on, Senor, for a great many years. Living with Don Juan Manuel was a nephew whom he loved dearly. Every night they supped together. Later, the nephew would go forth to see one or another of his friends, and still later, Don Juan Manuel would go forth to kill some man. One night, the nephew did not come home. Don Juan Manuel was uneasy because of his not coming, fearing for him. In the early morning, the city watch knocked at Don Juan Manuel's door, bringing there the dead body of his nephew, with a wound in the heart of him that had killed him. And when they told where his body had been found, Don Juan Manuel knew that he himself, not knowing him in the darkness, had killed his own nephew whom he so loved. Then Don Juan Manuel saw that he had been living a bad life, and he went to the father, to whom he confessed all the killings that he had done. And then the father put a penance upon him, that at midnight he shall go alone to the streets until he was come to the chapel of Esprezion. It faces upon the Posela of Santo Domingo, Senor, and in those days, before it was a gallows, and that he shall kneel in front of that chapel, beneath the gallows, and that so kneeling he should tell his rosary through. And Don Juan Manuel was pleased, because so light a penance had been put upon him, and so soon to have peace again in his soul. But that night, at midnight, when he set forth to do his penance, no sooner was he come out from his own door than voices sounded in his ears, and near him was the terrible ringing of a little bell, and he knew that the voices of which troubled him were those of the ones whom he killed. And the voices sounded in his ears so woefully that the ringing of the little bell was so terrible that he could not have kept onward. Having gone a little way, his stomach was tormented by the fear that was upon him, and he came back again to his own home. Then the next day he told the father what has happened, and that he could not do that penance, and asked that another be put upon him. But the father denied him of any other penance, and bade him to do that which was set for him, or die in his sin and go forever in hell. Then Don Juan Manuel again tried to do his penance, and at that time got a half of the way to the chapel of the Esprezion, and then again turned backward to his home, because of those woeful voices and the terrible ringing of that little bell. And so again he asked that he be given another penance, and again it was denied to him. And again, getting to that night 3/4 of the way to the chapel, he tried to do what he was bidden to do. But he could not do it, because of the woeful voices and the terrible ringing of the little bell. Then went he for the last time to the father, to beg for another penance, and for the last time it was denied to him. And for the last time he set forth from his house at midnight to go to the chapel of La Esprezion, in front of it, kneeling beneath the gallows, to tell his rosary through. And that night, Senor, was the very worst night of all. The voices were so loud and so very woeful that he was weak in dread of him, and he shook with fear, and his stomach was tormented because of the terrible ringing of the little bell. But he pressed on. You see, Señor, it was the only way to save his soul from blistering in hell through all eternity. And so he was come to the Placera de Santo Domingo, and there in front of the chapel of La Esprezion, beneath the gallows, he knelt down upon his knees and told his rosary through. And in the morning, Señor, all the city was astonished, and everybody, from the viceroy down to the cajadores, came running to the Placera de Santo Domingo. And where was a sight to see! And the sight was Don Juan Manuel, hanging dead on the gallows, where the angels themselves has hung him, Señor, because of his sin. End of Legend of Don Juan Manuel.